Hey everyone, welcome to Steadfast Care Planning, where we plan for care to live well. I'm Kelly Augsperger, long-term care insurance specialist and your guide. With me today is my longtime friend, Kelly Schmidt, a diabetic dietitian with Kelly Schmidt Wellness. Kel, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi. I love seeing both our names up there. It's so fun. And who knew, decades ago we'd be podcasting today.
I know. I love it. This is so exciting. Kel and I have known each other, I think, since we were 5. So it's been a long time. There was like a little gap in between when we were growing up and then we reunited in high school. But yes, we go way back, and Kel is here to share with us tips for older adults living with diabetes, how they can not only manage their disease, but thrive.
Yeah.
So really excited.
Yeah.
Kel, can we jump right in?
Sure.
And before we get into the nuts and bolts of treating diabetes, Kel, briefly tell us why you're so passionate about helping people with diabetes.
Sure. So I have type 1 diabetes, and I've had type 1 since 1991. And that actually happened on my 8th birthday. And it was scary. It was isolating. And I think things happen for a reason. I want to say, I have a reason why I have type 1 diabetes, but I do think I was meant to have this disease to help others pave the way and make it a little less hard. However, when I was diagnosed on my birthday in 2nd grade, my teacher also had type 1 diabetes. So I think if I were to be diagnosed at any point in time, it'd be very helpful to have someone in the classroom to help me along. But you would think my passion comes from my own autoimmune disease of type 1 diabetes and struggles and triumphs. But I would say when we were in high school, my dad really went through it. My dad, aunt, and uncle all had type 1 diabetes. And it was interesting to watch the disease and people you cared about, people that were older, people who knew better, people who were your heroes. And as I mentioned, my dad had a lot of complications. So he had everything from a heart attack to retinopathy to ulcers on his feet. And I remember early February in 2002, my dad had a kidney and pancreas transplant. And that dual transplant at Ohio State University was overwhelming. Just one, it was such an opportunity for more life. When you have a transplant, you're almost guaranteed 10 more years for that organ specifically. But also, I didn't realize how sick he was. And as that 17-year-old in the waiting room for hours and hours, I was deciding what I wanted to be when I grew up and what college I wanted to go to and what major to claim. And in that moment, I decided I want to be a dietitian to change the world one day at a time for people like him. So that even made me a little emotional. Yeah.
I know. And that's what you're doing, Kel. And she's doing it so well. I know at the end, she'll tell us where people can find more information about her, but she is doing that indeed and is having a very large impact amongst Americans in dealing with type 1 diabetes. Kel, I know there's some different statistics out there, one of which that there's 38 million people in the United States that are living with diabetes and over 29 million diagnosed and over 8 million undiagnosed, which that was surprising to me. And then about, is it 29% of older adults that would be 65 plus have diabetes, which means that's 16.5 million people. So, this affects a lot of Americans in the United States. And Kelly, we know that there are different types of diabetes, right? There's type 1 and type 2. So tell us, what's the difference between type 1 and type 2?
Yeah. And I'll even layer on to the stats you just shared. Basically, the takeaway, there's a lot of people with diabetes, and that those statistics are, a majority of them are speaking to type 2 diabetes, which is more of a metabolic form of diabetes. Okay. But it's so common that when people are like, oh, my mom or dad has type 2 diabetes in metabolic form, people aren't fazed because it's quite common. And that's kind of scary. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's okay. Just because it's average doesn't mean it's okay. It's hard. It's inflammatory. It doesn't feel good. So there's type 1 diabetes, as I've already started to lead. I have type 1 diabetes. That's an autoimmune form of a disease where the body's attacking certain cells of the organ, which kill off those cells and create that disease. So I have type 1 diabetes. It's an autoimmune disease, which can't be necessarily prevented. There's some form of a genetic stressor and some form of a leaky gut. That's related to all autoimmune conditions. But then in type 2, that's more of a metabolic condition. That's where genetics are strongly at play, but then also lifestyle is a much heavier factor. I don't want to create any confusion, but people might even hear of type 3 diabetes. Type 3 diabetes is more of a dementia, Alzheimer's form because Alzheimer's disease is so much related to blood sugar. So for anyone listening today, the advice I'm going to give can be very relatable to any single American because 3 out of 4 Americans on a daily basis have blood sugar spikes. And those people don't have diabetes. But the way our society is right now, we are not set up for success for healthy labs, healthy blood sugars, and more. And I would say the biggest insults to spike blood sugars, number one would be stress. When we're stressed, our cortisol is high, and that can make our blood sugar high. So I think stress should always be managed the best as possible. And one success with that is drink your water and get your sleep. When we sleep, we're better versions of ourselves. And I do believe sleep is the secret sauce to health. And then, of course, looking at our food. But again, stress forces us or leads us to make those healthier food choices. Stress leads us to less time to make healthy food in the fridge and so much more.
For sure. Kel, I see this play out in my daily life, right? Like if I'm more stressed out, I'm probably going to go grab that unhealthy snack versus what I should eat instead.
Yeah.
Or maybe a drink that maybe I shouldn't have instead of just water with maybe a little bit of lemon in it for flavor. So if you're stressed out, it is easy to lean to those things that sound and taste really good, but they're not good for us.
Yeah, or a quick hit of energy. But yeah, type 1 is autoimmune, type 2 is metabolic for the most part. And people who have type 2 diabetes tend to be overweight, but not always. People can be average weight, a decent BMI, although I think BMI has its weaknesses. But just because someone's overweight doesn't mean they have type 2 diabetes. And just because someone's an ideal weight doesn't mean they're not at risk.
Okay. So blood sugar, that's the big key here. So even if you don't have type 1, type 2, type 3 diabetes, you still might have, blood sugar that fluctuates, right? Goes up and down throughout the day. And so the best way to handle that, Kel, stress and diet.
Yeah. Stress, diet, sleep. Stress, diet, sleep, hydration. Yeah. Major and the majors. And I would call those 4 of the majors.
Okay. The Steadfast Care Planning Podcast is sponsored by Amada Senior Care. Amada provides complimentary consultation with a senior care advisor to find the right care from in-home caregiving to community care, as well as long-term care insurance claim advocacy and unique support partnerships for financial advisors to address family transitions and generational retention. To learn more, visit www.steadfastwithamada.com. So, and obviously for my podcast, most of what we're talking about really is geared to more older adults, like 65 plus. And I know a lot of your clients are a little younger than that, Kel, but you certainly have a vast array of knowledge and wisdom just in diabetes in general. So, even if an older adult hasn't been diagnosed with diabetes, talk to us about the importance of that nutrition and blood sugar. And what are some things that they can do to manage those well?
Yeah. I think being educated on symptoms of high or low blood sugars can lead to symptoms like consistent thirst, frequent urination, moodiness, although moodiness can be related to a lot of things. That can be related to high blood sugars, even consistent cravings for sugar. So even though the blood has a lot of sugar in it, that sugar's not in the cells. So the brain thinks the cells are starved of energy. So the brain's saying, grab more sweets, grab more simple carbohydrates, grab more carbohydrates. Although the brain's not saying those words, that's just what we tend to reach for. So those are symptoms, but also low blood sugars can come from high blood sugars, not to create any confusion. But if you can't go from one meal to the next without being hangry or shaky, that can be a sign of low blood sugar. So I think it's important to know the symptoms and signs. And then I think always build a healthy plate. As we age, we actually need more protein with aging. And also as we age, people tend to want less protein because they might feel protein sits in their stomach. It's harder to digest. It might be less of a craving, but knowing the power of protein, quality protein can go a long way for healthy aging, for healthy bones, healthy muscle mass, and blood sugar stability. So protein can help blood sugar stay stable. And that's a key tip all around.
Is there a general rule of thumb of like, you should have this much protein per day? Like if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're this age, what do you suggest?
I think everyone using their own hand is a good measuring tool. And the palm of your hand, the width and thickness is an ideal amount per meal. Now, a lot of people are not putting a steak in their cereal bowl. Like breakfast is usually is the most protein depleted meal. So that's where I really position eggs. And people are like, well, Kelly, what about cholesterol? And there's so much to debunk on the 1970s, 80s information on that we all should be low fat and fat free. And also that cholesterol in eggs is bad for our heart. I would first say an egg is Mother Nature's multivitamin. There's over 90 vitamins and minerals in there. So don't fear eggs. And cholesterol in food does not directly relate to cholesterol in the body. When someone has high cholesterol levels, I always look at what is their blood sugar. It's usually a sign of high insulin and usually a sign of spiked blood sugar rather than people eating too much shrimp and eggs.
Okay.
But with breakfast, think through ways you can have more protein in that meal. And that could be Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs, quality sausage. So everyone's like, well, isn't sausage processed? When it comes to nutrition, we want to make sure we're eating whole food ingredients, not necessarily overthinking how that food came together. So yes, sausage will be more processed and minced and then, formed and whatnot. But you really just want to look at the ingredients and say, okay, does it say pork, chicken, or beef or whatever the protein source is? And then is it spices or is it sulfites, nitrates, chemicals, citric acids, and so forth? We want to remove all that chemical factory. We want to have things that are really preserved with celery salt or things that we can pronounce or understand.
Okay. What about protein powders?
I love protein powders, but they're good and bad, just like supplements. Yeah. There's ones that are third-party tested, and then there's ones from the Wild Wild West. Who knows what's in them? In 2016, the New York Attorney General did a study on 3 supplements, and they pulled supplements from, I'm forgetting the big names, and it's not really that important, but it's basic things like CVS or Walgreens or Target, like very basic places that we would all reach for supplements. And they took those to a lab and they were vitamin C on the label, but there's no vitamin C in the bottle. So you always want to make sure that supplements are third party tested. If anyone wants help with supplements, it's part of my witchcraft, I would call as my registered dietitian skill set. But FullScript is a very reputable place to source supplements. And FullScript's kind of like an Amazon for vitamins and protein powders. But with protein powders, again, they are so helpful in getting that protein, especially if you don't have a big appetite, especially in the morning. You can mix protein powder with oatmeal. You can mix it into that yogurt. Of course, you can make a smoothie. But with protein powder, there's better than others.
What do you look for, Kel, in protein powders? Like, what are things to stay away from in protein powders or things to lean towards?
Yeah, a lot of people will want to look for labels like heart healthy and those type of labels, but really the skill set and knowing what you're fueling yourself with good nutrition is reading the ingredient list. The ingredient list is where you want to go. And again, avoid the chemicals. But with protein powders, I think less is more. I'm a big Costco shopper, and I'll go to Costco and clients will be like, well, I get the Orgain there. Orgain, if you look at it, has at least 150 ingredients in it. And it is too much for the body to digest at once or comprehend. So whole food is messengers to the body. And if we bundle every extract from every fruit, vegetable, chemical, protein into one little powder, what's that telling the body? It's a storm of confusion. Yeah. So with protein powders, I think ingredient list less is more and avoid those chemicals. My go-to protein powder is one from Designs for Health. It was tested for heavy metals. So again, I don't want to create fear. I know a lot of things, so maybe I'm sharing too much, but Designs for Health was tested for heavy metals compared to Vital Proteins, compared to Bulletproof, these other big label brands. And Designs for Health was known to have the absolute least amount of heavy metals because things like rice protein powder or vegetarian form, it might be really high in arsenic. So it's just good to know that you're talking to someone who knows their stuff and not someone who's just making a sale on a product and so forth.
Kel, okay, so heavy metals, let's just take a little detour here.
Yes,
so
please.
Heavy metals, do you see a correlation between that and cognitive issues like Alzheimer's,
100%,
like dementia?
100%. I see a relationship with toxins. I see a relationship with toxins and blood sugars. I see a relationship with toxins and blood sugars, toxins and hormones, toxin and cognition. So I think, again, the biggest insults in America is stress, sleep deprivation, and toxins. Those are the top 3. And then we can talk about the food. As a dietitian, that should be what I'm talking about. But these top 3 are really driving the others. I'll have clients who are like, oh, I went to Europe for summer and I felt great. I actually lost weight traveling and I drank every day. Yeah. There's a big difference of what's on their food and what's on ours. So I think where your budget can allow, you want to shop for organic. You want to look at ingredients, look for whole real food as much as possible. But we need pleasure on the plate. Life is short.
Yes. Give us something tasty.
Yeah. But just reach for more quality.
Yeah.
Like, I love my chocolate. I love paleo fine desserts. And just meaning I'll take almond meal and chocolate chips and some eggs and vanilla extract and maybe some monk fruit instead of powdered sugar and whip together a cookie. But there's ways to find ingredients, combine them together and still get that pleasurable thing. But if you have nostalgia for a Twinkie or whatever it may be, just don't have it every day.
Yeah. Every now and then.
Yeah.
Not daily. The Steadfast Care Planning Podcast is sponsored by the Certification for Long-Term Care, CLTC, an in-depth training program that gives financial advisors the education and tools they need to discuss extended care planning with their clients. Look for the CLTC designation when choosing an advisor. If you're looking to become a CLTC, enroll in their masterclass and enter Kelly in the coupon code field for $200 off. Well, Kel, what challenges do older adults face with diabetes versus younger people? Do they have more challenges?
Oh, of course. I think with aging, everything It's like a toilet paper roll. As we get older, there's fewer length to turn the wheel and more things can show up. So I think with age, with time, there can be more complications, more risk, more setbacks. However, I think my biggest advice where I can get really fired up is no matter what your age is advocate your needs. Advocate your needs, especially in today's day and age in our conventional medical system. Doctors are burned out. Doctors are spread thin, and there's a shortage, especially in endocrinology, which manages diabetes. I can tell you, I just got off the phone yesterday. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, your appointment's canceled again for my endocrinologist." And I was supposed to see my endocrinologist in July. So then I got bumped to August. Now I'm not seeing them until November. And I'm not alone with this situation, but I also know how to navigate my needs to make sure that my blood sugars are okay. But speak up, outsource where you can. I know there's Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth that are guiding who we can see and what services we can get. But you can be your own best advocate, or you can empower a family member to help you along the way. But if this doctor keeps pushing and canceling your appointments, find that next office, that other institution that can help you. And that's something I indeed did. But I want people to feel they can be empowered. They have the right to be organized, show up to your appointment with questions. What can you do better? Why do you have the symptom? What can help resolve it? And it's not just a prescription pad. It can be nutrition. It can be stress management. It can be movement. It can be a number of things, but good questions lead to good solutions, and people need to feel empowered to speak up.
Right. So Kel, people living with type 1, type 2, or type 3 diabetes, should they all see an endocrinologist in addition to their PCP? Is that like pretty regular routine?
I would definitely say so. But some people, again, I'm going to push type 3 diabetes out of the picture because someone with Alzheimer's disease will not be seeing an endocrinologist.
Okay.
They'll be seeing a neurologist and all the other things. But if anyone has a family member or even genetics for Alzheimer's, just know blood sugar regulation is important. But for type 1 diabetes, absolutely, we need endocrinologists. Type 2 diabetes, they might under the care of a PCP, family medicine practitioner. But it's just really important to be consistent with those appointments for prevention. And of course, educate yourselves. Be curious of what's 1% thing you can do better for yourself today to have you more days, have more energy, have more quality of life.
So that you can thrive and not just survive.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Kel, any final advice on what people can do or how they can plan to live well? You just gave some really good tips.
Yeah, I think I gave a lot. I wish I could, talk longer, but, our attention and time is so precious. I would go back to something I've already said, and that is to major in the majors. I think with aging, one thing I do see, especially with my perimenopausal clients and even menopause clients, is sleep, but do all you can to get that sleep. Let it be even just a quality supplement with a blend of herbs, of B6, valerian, a low dose of melatonin, but support your sleep. It is the secret sauce of health. And then next up, something that we all have accessible is to make sure you're well hydrated. Those are two easy things to dominate daily, to better follow up to better nutrition choices and more. And certainly follow me. I'm Diabetic Dietitian on most media outlets. I'm most active on Instagram, but follow me and I'm always happy to help and do all I can to add value to people's health.
Kelly has a fantastic social media presence and she's putting out really good information and content to educate and inform people on how they can really live their best lives and again, thrive and not just survive if they have blood sugar issues or, working on nutrition. But obviously you focus specifically with people living with diabetes. Kel, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah.
Really appreciated hanging out with you. I love you. And I'll talk to you later. Take care.
Thank you for having me.